Honey, look at those beautiful clouds.
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
Put the rumors to rest. Gotta help the children and give it the best can. Stand around and be blind to the frost can. Taking no more, how can they relax that? I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile. Baby, I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. Just wanna see your smile, baby. Living on earth, we must respect the earth. Human and animal, we all deserve the right to peace and opportunity. But nowadays we are blind, we can't see.
Hi, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio for the week of July 19th, 2014. A lot happening again this week. We'll get to more question and answers and call-ins here in a little while. I have Russ Tanner with us, of course, without which we wouldn't have a radio show. Russ does so much behind the scenes and keeps everything going. I'm immensely grateful for his help. I have Greg Palin with us today also, former congressional candidate from Georgia. Greg has lots of insight, had lots of experience with the system as a whole, which we know is absolutely diseased to the bone. On that note, we had a meeting this week that many might have seen in Shasta County, California, in front of the supervisors. We were put on the agenda, and at that meeting, we officially had the largest turnout of citizens for any subject, any agenda item ever in this large modern facility's 10-year history. That was acknowledged by the chairman of the board as the meeting started. The entire auditorium was packed, people standing, sitting, overflowing out into the hallways, out into the courtyard. And, at that point, the board understood the public pressure that was on this. And I will acknowledge that whatever our differences are, there are a few people on that board that, well, actually, most of them on the board really obviously came around. They voted unanimously to pass a resolution to investigate the climate engineering issue further. But just putting it on the agenda was a big step for some of those people. And I have to give him credit for that. I absolutely have to give him credit. So as this total of 4-hour meeting went on, and people in quite organized fashion, we did our best to organize this meeting in a manner, and there's a lot of help. I mean, a lot of people helped me with this endeavor, if you will. And we tried to organize activists so that they had particular speaking points, so there wasn't overlap and just really unthought-out statements, if you will. So we just posted a more condensed version of this on GeoEngineering Watch just 10 minutes ago, by the way, so that might be a little shorter version that people can watch that's condensed down. But the bottom line is, what got this speaking issue on the record, or on the agenda, was the fact that Matthew Sutton was going to speak there. He's the CEO of what was the second largest environmental consulting firm in the country and the fourth in the world, and I think as of a merger last week, they might even be the largest in the world now. And he was going to speak at this event, and so it was pretty hard for the supervisors to say no. We have somebody of that magnitude willing to speak out. On July 10th, fully 5 days before this meeting, the head of Shasta County Building and Safety and the air quality staff took it upon himself. His name is Rick Simon. He took it upon himself to go to considerable length to contact Matthew Sutton and talked to him for an hour and a half. Immediately after that phone call, I got a call from Matthew canceling his speaking engagement, which he was completely committed to. Now, Matthew's he's a good man. He's an honest man, and I don't know what pressure, I don't know what took place in that meeting or what other factors, or that phone conversation from Shasta County, what other factors there were, but it did come to my attention at that time that Shasta County has contracts with AECOM, the company that Matthew is the CEO for. So, again, if there was nothing to hide, why would the head of the Shasta County Building and Safety and Air Quality take it upon himself to make this call and, it appears, ensure that Matthew wouldn't show up to speak? And I think that should be a hell of a big red flag for people, and I think more explaining needs to happen with that. And during this meeting, after everybody spoke, all the experts spoke, there was 10 experts, and then about 50 of the community spoke, all gave really excellent presentations. And then there was the rebuttal from this same individual from Shasta County to answer questions. This is Rick Simon answering questions for the Board of Supervisors, same person who called Matthew Sutton and made sure apparently that he wouldn't show up. And the board asked him, is any sort of testing done in Shasta County that would address these very fine particulates that is the concern of the community, nanoparticulates? And it's interesting to watch Simon. Anybody can watch his presentation online. And he went to great lengths in very ambiguous language to more or less say, no, we don't do any such testing, which we already know. So the word is getting out, and the pushback from the media now, I mean, our North State, I don't even want to call it media, it's just an institution of propaganda at this point, but their pushback is so unprofessional, so emotional, that it's clear they know that the walls are closing in on them. And we're trying to expose these people, again, with the disinformation directory, encourage people to help participate in that site and support it, to expose the so-called journalists, and that term is used extremely loosely in this case, who are simply putting out whatever disinformation they're told to put out. They never use the word geoengineering in their pieces, especially an editorial. The paper took it upon themselves to do an editorial yesterday, which was just a mindless rant at best, never using any science terms, referring to the, in quotation marks, experts, as if 38-year retired fish and game biologists aren't an expert, 35-year Forest Service biologists aren't an expert, retired commercial pilots. I mean, the list goes on and on, neurologists, physicians. So, they're truly desperate at this point. But the bottom line is to kind of counter that, what we're doing is starting our own paper in this region. I've been involved with this sort of endeavor before. It's not hard. It's something that we will try to pin a model for others to do in other locations, because it's truly not hard and it's not expensive if you have the network of people to just distribute that. Free paper, no ads, focusing strictly on geoengineering, period. No other articles about any other subject unless there's something truly of dire magnitude that might start World War III. But other than that, focus on climate engineering. I think our paper might be called the Climate Engineering Report, and to expose not just data about climate engineering, but also about those who are helping to hide this atrocity that happens in the skies every single day, specifically naming the journalists, like our local journalists, giving their public phone numbers, their email contacts, so the public can themselves pursue these people and ask why they're lying and hold them accountable, because they need to be held accountable. So as the walls close in, a quick update of what's going on around the globe right now. I mean, the lack of coverage on certain things is very harmful at this point. Now, we have some big news items going on, obviously, the very mysterious plane 777 going down again, another Malaysian airline, same aircraft, same type. What was it doing flying there? And I know that the jury's out on exactly what happened. Certainly, it's exactly what our government wanted to have happen, gives them exactly the premise they need to go to war, and that's all they're looking for. So we don't know who shot that plane down, and there are some circumstances that indicate it could have been a mistake by the anti-Kiev forces. But what was that plane doing there? Why was it flying at a low altitude? Why wasn't it warned? And again, we don't know what happened. For all we know, our government knocked that plane out of the air as a false flag event. But one thing that seems pretty certain, Russia wouldn't intentionally do that. And I'm not in love with Russia at all. But it doesn't make sense for them to have involve themselves with something that is exactly the wrong step for their position. They've been very reserved in this whole affair, even though they've been getting bombed. Some of their civilians got bombed. Our government would have unleashed World War III if they were in Russia's position already. So anyway, we can all scratch our heads about that. But interesting also that event provided a lot of cover for Israel's invasion of Gaza, which certainly that's an elephant stomping on an ant in this case. And I don't condone if the Hamas group was remotely reasonable, they should not be launching their missiles. I mean, that's incredibly counterproductive to their cause. It's plays right into Israel's hand in this case. So that whole affair, again, provides an awful lot of cover for that ground invasion. And if Israel has, given the caliber of military they have and the technology, they could pinpoint wherever these rockets are launching from easily. But that's not what they're after. They're after much more. They're after taking more ground for more settlements. There's a lot more to all of these affairs. Now, while all this is going on, we don't get to hear about the fact that the planet is literally burning to the ground. We're all now drifting in uncharted waters. An ever-worsening climate hell is unfolding around us by the day, and the vast majority of the population is completely oblivious. And we have a lot of denial, again, on all sides of the fence in one form or another. We have some of the most deeply rooted denial in the climate science community that completely and tenaciously denies the extremely obvious elephant in the room of climate engineering. And it's that level of denial by those who claim to be enlightened is astounding, truly astounding to me. But in the anti-geoengineering community, we also have people that are denying that there's anything wrong with the climate, that global warming is a hoax, and that denial is pretty profound as well. So I hope from all sides people break out of this denial, take a good hard look at facts all the way around. We look at the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and this is truly where the facade of our society is so visible. This is the largest scientific panel on any subject in human history, and virtually all their modeling is essentially worthless. None of it even considers the horrific effects of geoengineering on climate feedback loops that it helps to feed. We have, again, catastrophic ozone depletion, total disruption of the hydrological cycle, mass methane release happening right now, completely contaminated planet. All are connected to climate engineering, all completely ignored by the climate science community. And in the case of the IPCC, the largest scientific panel ever assembled on any subject in human history, how can you not have feedback loops? How can you not consider that when you light a fuse to a stick of dynamite, it doesn't just keep burning along at the same pace the fuse burns at. When it hits something else, it blows up. And that's what we have. The methane situation right now is absolutely a global cataclysm unfolding by the day, not a word, not even from the climate science community. So our reality is changing by the day. And many have been trained to think this climate modeling is alarmist, that it's overblown, it's exaggerated. The truth is completely the opposite. These climate models are exponentially short of how bad our situation is, and people need to understand that. And I challenge people to look at how much of the planet is burning right now, burning to the ground. Looks like we had a huge methane burp, or hydrogen sulfide, in the far east of Russia, and that's certainly indicative of what's coming. We have the same thing happening on the seafloor. That's why the massive fish deaths, it deoxygenates the water. So here's a headline from Canada. According to reports from Canada's Interagency Fire Center, the total acres burned to date are more than 6 times that of a typical year. So that means we're right now about 1,200% of normal. That's an astounding figure. A rate of burning that, according to recent scientific study, is unprecedented, not just for this century, but for any period in Canada's basement forest record over the last 10,000 years. There's nothing normal about what's happening. Nothing. When you have people throw that at you, that this is all part of some normal cyclical pattern, it's not normal. If you put a gun to somebody's head and pull the trigger, you can't just say, well, people die. It's natural. Nothing natural about this. Let's go to Siberia. Now what appears to be more than 200 fires are belching out very thick plumes of smoke stretching for more than 2,000 miles over north-central Siberia and on into the recently ice-free zone of the Laptev Sea. Imagine a smoke bank 2,000 miles wide. There's some fire fronts that are 200 miles wide there. It's burning to the ground. This is cataclysmic effect on the planet. Again, feedback loops, none of which are taken into account by the IPCC. One, this is all melting methane clathrate in methane deposits in these forest floors. 2, all that dark soot material goes into the sky. It tends to trap heat, and it also settles down on ice further north. And this causes the ice to lose its albedo. Black ice absorbs 70-80% more heat than white ice. So it causes the ice to melt much faster. It's a feedback loop, feeds on itself. Now we have the methane, again, that's spewing out, and because of the Coriolis effect, the Earth spinning, it tends to keep that methane fairly concentrated over the Arctic. And methane over a several-month period can be 1,000 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. So we have geoengineering fueling all of this. These forests have not had a normal hydrological cycle. The rain that does fall is toxic. We have an ozone layer that's shredded thanks to geoengineering. So the UV is cooking the trees. So these programs are literally pounding the nails into our collective coffin. Lots of other causes. Again, I've mentioned a lot because I want people to keep their perspective in balance. Human activity is damaging the planet from countless directions. Can't put 100 million tons of CO2 in the air every single day and not have a problem. But geoengineering is making an already bad situation exponentially worse. So let's move on to Ebola, which is also happening. Just a quick update. Ebola, which appears to be an engineered virus, headlined deep in the forests of southern Guinea. The first victims, this is a recap, fell ill with high fevers. People assumed it was a perennial killer, malaria, and had nothing to do with, nothing to fear, touching the bodies, as is the custom in traditional funerals. Some desperate relatives brought their loved ones to the distant capital in search of better medical care, unknowingly spreading what ultimately was discovered to be Ebola, one of the world's most deadly diseases. Ebola, a hemorrhagic fever that can cause its victims to bleed from the ears and nose, had never before seen in this part of, been seen in West Africa, where medical clinics are few and far between. The disease has turned up in at least 2 other countries, Liberia and Sierra Leone, and 539 deaths have been attributed to the outbreak that is now the largest on record. Ebola, again, a horrific way to die. It liquefies your internal organs with hemorrhaging. It's a very devastating disease. Appears to have been engineered if you look at the history. So maybe they're testing the water right now. So we have, again, the climate engineering in all-out mode right now. We have massive Pacific spraying. I posted some satellite images today, the blanket spraying of the west or eastern Pacific, and all this blows in on us. And a lot of people in the anti-geoengineering movement, again, they only look for the horizon-to-horizon trails. If they don't see that, they think there's nothing going on. That couldn't be further from the truth. You see silvery white skies, you're seeing aerosols in the skies, period. Seeing lots of different types of applications now, especially over the West, especially where perhaps it's related to all this recent awareness of this issue. Much more covert spraying going on. We even see them sometimes if they got an existing bank of aerosol cloud going, they'll shut on when they go over that bank, and they'll turn off when they come out in open air. We're seeing some pretty interesting things right now. So, and on the bigger picture, as all these walls close in, and I'll stop with this, my rant with this, the power structure is going to do something. It seems likely that some shoe has to drop soon, whether that's economic. The Christine Lagarde, many have seen what she said on the record, the head of the IMF, seemed very cryptic that something's coming very soon, perhaps a bank holiday, a currency reset. We have big indicators, the BDI, the Baltic Dry Index. That's the index of all global shipping that goes over the oceans from anywhere to anywhere. It's virtually in the basement. The peak of the BDI was about 11,500. It's down at 700 now. Shipping isn't happening. So you can't hide that for long. It's a house of cards from top to bottom. Now the environment's imploding. Economic systems are imploding. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know you can't expand very destructively and perpetually on a finite planet. And we have reached the end. So our reality is going to change soon. The question is, will we have time to alter our course? Will we? Will we all come together and help alter our course? So that was a long rant. Greg, Russ, thank you for being patient. You guys saw, let's go back to the event of the 15th. You guys both saw what happened, and the supervisors unanimously voted to continue this investigation. We're going to make sure that they do. So, Greg, what was your take on that based on all your previous experiences with government as a whole?
Dane, Greg dropped out a minute ago. I'm going to bring him back in right now, okay?
Okay, we can bring him back in. I'll keep ranting till then. And Russ, in between doing that, you saw the meetings and so forth. There we go. If we get Greg on.
Yeah, meetings are fantastic. It's good to hear that this vote went through. Hopefully, they're not going to whitewash us. I mean, do you have any feel about how the attitude is from the committee?
Yes, certainly they'll try to whitewash it. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Greg, got your back.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, I lost you guys. As you well know, Dane, I'm trying to complete this cabin up here in the mountains, and the cellular service is pretty poor up here. So
we'll hang on to you as long as we can, buddy. Sorry about that long rant. There's just so much to go over right now, and it's really, even the data I gave is the tip of the iceberg, but trying to get people to look at the wider picture and realize from how many directions the walls are closing in. But the question I had, Greg, for you was, you saw some of the video of the Shasta County event?
Oh, yeah.
And based on your
actually,
experience...
what I thought, Dane, I saw the interview that you did. A young man was doing an interview with you, about a 5 or 6 minute interview. That's actually about all I saw this week. But
when you have a chance,
did a great job.
When you have a chance to look and you see what these guys, their demeanor, I will say, was extremely courteous and cordial. And there was no question from the beginning of the meeting, no matter how many people were there, they made it clear they would listen to everyone. And we're not accustomed to this, frankly. But the show of support from the community was immense, immense. Again, I mean, there were people everywhere. And but if you...
Now, I watched, obviously, the ADEC meeting a week or two ago, and that was fantastic. It's just, these are really good signs. I just hope that they do honest investigations now, and it's not another Warren Commission or 9/11 Commission type situation, you know?
We don't count on anything. In fact, you know, what we've seen in the past is there's every effort to make sure that nothing shows up in any test. So that's what we assume we're going to get. But it's not going to be that easy because we have other experts involved. And again, when you have a 38-year retired fish and game biologist, 35-year retired Forest Service biologist, giving the kind of data that's being given, they can't just write that off. Although the local media, as I mentioned, is trying to completely write it off. They don't mention any of the experts in their editorial from a day ago. We should be able to address some of their lying and disinformation with the paper that we're going to start. But no, we're not counting on them for any credible data, and we're going to make sure that it's done from several directions so that we can do our own. We will be doing our own testing at the same time. So, and the effects on the ground are so cataclysmic at this point that it's impossible to hide this much longer. Trees are dying everywhere, and in fact, the major news anchor, a guy named Mike Mangus on Channel 7 News, the night of the presentation, you know, when they did, just after they did the coverage of the presentation in Shasta County, which of course dying trees were discussed, this main anchor, who's been skeptical in the past, asked the anchor meteorologist, whose name is Mike Kruger. So we have two Mikes there. So Mike number one asked Mike number two, hey, my trees are all dying, leaves are falling off, what's up with that? And the meteorologist, who's tenaciously denied this issue, doesn't want to talk to anybody about it, won't debate it, he just blew it off. I don't know anything about that. But it was an interesting exchange to see this, and clearly the main news anchor was scratching his head. All this stuff's starting to fit together for him now, and you can't hide it when it gets to the point it is now. Trees are dying everywhere. So no matter what they say, to answer your question, Greg, no matter what their testing is, I don't think it's going to be something they can keep under the rug.
Right, right.
And you're seeing trees up there where you're at that aren't looking too good as well. I know your trees look better than ours.
Definitely. I mean, definitely, when I send you pictures of my project, and thank God I'm getting close to completion because I'm about to go crazy, but you always help me point out all my dead trees.
Well, you know, I grew up with that. It's all I grew up with. I mean, I spot any tree that's not in healthy form, and that's pretty much all trees now. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to.
No, you and me both. I mean, I watch my trees closely also because I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and we heated our lodge with wood, and I'm pretty in touch with nature myself. So
it's hard to watch them die. No trees, no people. It's that simple. So, you know, we'll definitely keep the march up on this.
The thing is, Dane, on the East Coast here, I think people are finding it, you know, we got, you know, you're telling me that you're getting zero rain, and that's what I see. We got 3.5 inches of rain last night. So on the East Coast, you know, you can see why people think it's still normal, you know, relatively.
And we can't get a drop of water to save our lives out here. I mean, it's so astoundingly dry. Everything you touch just snaps because it's just crisp. And to put this in perspective, where I live, based on normal annual rainfall records, in the last 18 months, we're about 90 inches of rain short. 90. It's astounding. Instead of 100 and perhaps 115 inches of rain in that time, we've had about 25. And that rain came over a much shorter period, much hotter temperatures. By the way, in California, the official records are out now. For the last 6 months, it's shattered all known meteorological records. An average of 5 degrees above normal for 6 months. Now, and that's with them lying about the temperatures to the downside about 5 degrees. So we were actually about 10 degrees above normal for 6 months. And even that normal is not normal because the records taken from 1980 to 2010, we're already talking about much normal than historical norms. We're in total meltdown. And I know in the East it's hard for people to get their arms around that, but I encourage them, look at the bigger picture. Look at the GISS maps. Look at the forest burning down in Siberia, Canada, smoke banks everywhere. Forests don't burn to the ground because it's too cold or too wet. It's only certain areas that are getting the benefit of that for the purpose of confusing the public, creating division. That's what's happening.
No doubt.
That's what we have. So, Russ, the trees in your area, your trees, how do they look in Philadelphia? Where you're at?
Well, you can see problems with the trees everywhere I go. I recently traveled to Florida, and you can see damage along the highways and in different places. Things aren't right. Some of the plants have the acid burn type scenario that we see all across the country and in Europe as well. It's not like it is out there here, I will tell you that. You're certainly having a very extreme situation there, but there is visible damage everywhere I go, from here to Florida.
Yeah, the burning, that's something people should really take note of. We talked about that in the past, but this is a chemical burn from the ice-nucleating materials. That's when it showed up here. That's when it showed up in other places, because that endothermic reaction creates a chemical burn. That's exactly what it does. So even without extremely cold temperatures, you still see that burn on trees because they're ice-nucleating everything. Why? To try to cool things down. And I've been in the woods when there's moisture moving across us. All you can hear above is aircraft. I mean, literally one after another. It's like being on the end of the LAX airport runway. And then you feel it's like someone opened a freezer door and you feel this cold air descending out of the clouds that should be raining, but are not, because they're ice-nucleating the clouds, which tends to dissipate the moisture in the manner in which they do it over our area. So you get a blast of cold air, but it's dry. You have this cloudy, again, what should be wet and stormy, but it's not. But you do get a blast of cold air, and it's just an attempt to drop the mercury, and that cold air is dense. When they nucleate the clouds and create some cold air, it settles right down to the ground. And I mean, I felt the temperature drop 10 degrees in literally a couple minutes. I mean, you can feel this blast from the sky, and they're just simply they're desperate right now. They're completely desperate to try to hide the gravity and the magnitude of destruction they have helped to cause with climate engineering.
Plus, Dane, everywhere, I'd love to tell people what the burns look like, because everybody who goes out and looks sees them all across the country. I get reports all over the world that people see this. It looks like somebody has gone outside and they've sprayed some kind of acid, like just slung acid across plants, and you have all these dead spots on the leaves that look like they're just acid burn. And everybody who goes out and looks, they see this phenomenon going out everywhere.
Ross, let me add something to what you just said. I was coming up we were hauling boards down our cabin down on Trout Stream on my gator, and I was backing my gator up the hill, and it just started to rain, and a raindrop hit me right in the eye. And I'm pretty tough. I had to stop. My eye was burning so bad from that raindrop, and it really does make you wonder. You said acid. It made me think, what in the heck was in that raindrop? But,
well, God only knows on any given day what's in there. And,
I've never burned my eye like that before.
Yeah, you're not the only person I've heard that from. I have a phenomenon here where I have myself and friends in this area will have their eyes burn during times of intense spraying. Just you can get a burning sensation in your eyes as well.
Right.
Yeah, you felt that too?
Yeah, I agree. You felt it, obviously. I've heard the same thing. to give people an idea of just how falsified all the data is right now. I spoke earlier in the show about the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, largest scientific panel on any subject in human history. According to their modeling, and try to get your arms around this, their modeling states that if we had a global temperature rise of 18 degrees centigrade, it's about 36 degrees Fahrenheit, that it could cut global GDP in half. Well, that's an astounding statement. So apparently we're all still here, we're all still doing fine, we're just not making as much stuff as we used to make. All life on Earth ends likely at about a 12 to 14 degree Fahrenheit rise, which is 7 degrees C. And they're saying at 18 degrees C, when we're on our way to being Venus, that we're still here making stuff, we're just not making as much stuff. I mean, it's so patently false, their quote-unquote modeling. The people that make this modeling are the same people that are engaged in climate engineering, the same people that lie about everything else, that cell phones aren't harmful, that dumping untold billions of gallons of crude into the Gulf, no big deal. It's nothing but lies from top to bottom. And people need to understand the gravity of our situation and engaging in the fight. And this is important. A lot of people are still in the mode that, well, they don't really have much time for this because they're working on their retirement, because they want to golf when they're 60 in the year, 2030, 2035. We're not going to be here on this course. We're not going to be here.
And they're hanging on the 50% GDP figure that might actually be a potential reality, which you and I and Russ obviously know, and a lot of the listeners know that's not going to happen.
At a global average temperature rise of 36 degrees, we're all long since gone. We're talking about if you have an average rise of 36 degrees, then that's when you start having, you would have peak temperatures in certain regions of 170 or 180 degrees. And people that think that this can't happen, it has happened. It's happened in the Paleocene, Eocene thermal maximum 55 million years ago. A much smaller methane expulsion than what appears to be happening now, and with no other anthropogenic damage. You didn't have human beings destroying the planet, and we definitely are, in many ways, climate engineering being the epitome of that. But during that era, 55 million years ago, you had surface temperatures in the equatorial zones of 145 degrees. Nothing lives terrestrially. Nothing lives in those kind of temperatures, or aquatic life. You had ocean temperatures 105, 108, based on paleo data. Nothing lives in the seas at that temperature. So you had a dead zone then, based on paleo data, that went from about 30 degrees south to 30 degrees north. Nothing lived. During this event, you had 75-80% terrestrial extinction, 95% aquatic extinction, and now we have enough methane again in the East Laptev Sea to extinguish life on Earth about 100 times over, enough to cause a Permian-style mass extinction 100 times over, and that's probably conservative. So obviously we don't want to stay on this track. And again, however dark the horizon looks, if we know we can do something that would change direction radically, and that change starts with stopping climate engineering, period. That's the epitome of human insanity. It's the epitome of the assault on all life on Earth. So, Greg, you're in contact with a lot of different people and from a lot of different perspectives. How many are really beginning to wake up to the gravity of what we face? Overall, maybe they don't know all the details, but they know something's radically wrong.
Well, it's like you and I have talked about, Dane. Plant the seed and move on. And I'm amazed at how many people have had someone else plant a seed, or you don't reach them, and you might never have a chance of reaching them, but you planted that seed, and the next person comes in and waters it. I was in a restaurant the other night, and I handed out a couple, probably 4 or 5 year brochures and 3 or 4 year DVDs to people sitting around me. And the waiter came up and said, there were some people in here last week. There were 2 people at 2 different tables talking about climate engineering. And I'm like, wow, that is so refreshing to hear that people other than myself are bringing it up and talking about it with their waiters. And that just means that we are having an effect, and I would encourage everyone at this point, and I know you'll agree with me on this, Dane, no matter where we are, when it is, we don't have much time. We have to push ourselves to give out the brochures, to give out the DVDs, to bring it up, to talk about it, to slam our family that doesn't want to listen to us and calls us conspiracy theorists, turn the tables on them and bring it up. You know,
we have to. We absolutely have to. Every single day counts. Right now, if the planet Earth was a human being, it's like a diesel truck is sitting on its chest, and you can't breathe that way.
Yep.
And that truck can't sit there for long. And I know what this looks like. I know what this looks like firsthand. I in a remote area, I witnessed a rollover of a vehicle with a Jeep with no top. And there was a man pinned under that Jeep who was fine, other than the fact that the Jeep was sitting on his chest. And it's a helpless feeling to not be able to move that Jeep. And I watched that man die. I couldn't move it. I tried. And that's what's happening with our planet right now. That's exactly what's happening. And the Jeep on the chest, or the truck on the chest, is climate engineering. And there's a lot of other damage done. But if the Earth could just breathe, if it could breathe, if its respiratory system could work again, hydrological systems, life support systems, we have to make this happen. And the climate engineers, again, so many involved with these programs, and I know now firsthand because I mentioned last week I had a contact from someone on the inside that they are not, as we would expect, they are not looking at the whole picture. They look at little tiny parts and pieces of the puzzle with no overall perspective. And this is the advice that's being given to the military. And I've been into, actually, I went again into the Marine recruiting, Air Force recruiting, Army recruiting offices since last Saturday. Very respectful men and women there. They want to know. They're not rude. They don't shove me out the door when I say, hey, there's things going on in our skies that, you know, our military men and women don't really know. They're not being told about. We think the science community has given a lot of bad advice to the military, and it's being followed. It's to all of our expense. Please look. And they do. They're completely respectful. We must have these people on our side. And there are those in the military that are in complete denial and will do whatever they're told no matter what, same kind of people that have committed atrocities throughout the ages, but there's plenty who do have a sense of honor, who join to try to contribute to the common good. And once they know that they are being used for the common destruction, including their families and their children, I don't think they're going to participate. So the bottom line is, if we could let the planet respond, life is tenacious. It has to happen. These programs have to be exposed, and all of us have to jump into this battle. We have to, now. And it was encouraging at that meeting in Reading to see, you know, when you get there and you put a lot of work into something like this, and you don't know in that particular morning if people are going to say, this is the day. This is the day that I make my voice heard. No other excuses, no other scheduling problems. Everything else is secondary. I'm going to show up. And they showed up. They absolutely showed up. And now they know they're not powerless. And now we have a lot more momentum. We're going to start our own paper in the North State. We are. Again, this is very doable. It's not some giant endeavor to put a lot of articles together, have a professional editor assemble them into a file, and go to a print shop and have it printed up. It's cheap. It's not a big deal. People can do this everywhere. And we will put together a template so that people know how to do this in their area. And if they can put together the right people to assemble the data, $1,200, $1,500 total, that might print 10,000 papers. 10,000. That's a lot. If it's done properly and professionally, people will look at that. They'll read it. They'll circulate it. They'll share it. And all of a sudden, the local papers know that they don't have the stranglehold on the truth anymore. They don't have it. And this is what it's going to take. And we all have the resources available. If we really work and we get people involved, we can start this kind of spot fire. And again, all we have to do, we don't have to remove the whole dam of denial. All we need to do is put a crack in it. That's all. And the dam will blow itself. Right? Does that make sense, Greg and Russ? I mean, too many people think that somehow you have to reinvent all of society. You put a crack in the dam where the truth starts flowing out, you're not going to be able to stop it.
Absolutely.
Well, Dane, go ahead, Russ.
I was just going to say, absolutely. And if everybody just did a small part, it would make all the difference in the world. And people can go to the geoengineeringwatch.org website, and there's a link at the top that says what you can do, how you can get involved. And people need to go there and just take 5 minutes a day. If you can do nothing else, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week. If there were 20,000 people doing that, it would make a big difference.
It would make a huge
definitely. And people need to think about how they're going to feel when this thing goes down, and as the ball rolls out of control, the snowball's going down the hill, and it's getting further out of control every day, how are they going to feel if they did nothing down the road? And it's not just geoengineering, it's all the other issues too. The gun control issue is one near and dear to my heart. And I don't know if you guys heard or if you knew this, but supposedly Obama signed an executive order the other day to outlaw AK-47s, which, people may think that's a wild weapon, but, that's typically just the start. It's a semi-automatic rifle. And next will probably be AR-15s, and then it'll be hunting rifles, and there we are,
Those are, certainly protecting constitutional rights matters. What I hope, and we have a lot of gun owners in Northern California, a lot. But the message I'm trying to get across to them is, I don't care what weapons you have or what provisions you've built up, or if you think you're going to go in the woods and survive when everything gets tough. It's not going to happen. We don't stop climate engineering. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be alive at all, nor is there going to be anything alive in the forest. And again, I know the forest. I've grown up in it. I live in it. I'm there a lot, and I can tell you in the last 10 years, everything is almost dead. We see almost nothing in the forest for life. There's no berries, very few birds. Very rarely see a bear now. I used to have bears in my front yard. Very rarely see them now. The deer seem bewildered, very thin and a bit anemic looking. The squirrels don't have the full tails anymore. They look thin and sickly.
Then we've had elk and deer die off. There's been talk over the last several years about the declining deer population in Maine. Also took a trip to Florida recently to visit family, and astonished at how few bugs hit the car. I mean, normally you have to get at the gas stations and you got to wipe down that windshield every time you stop and get gas, and it was just like optional. It was like, whatever, there's a few things here, but it's just amazing the difference. I've never seen anything like this before.
It's not like what it used to be, is it? And it was heartbreaking. I don't think I mentioned this on the other show, but if I did, I'm going to say it again. I mean, about 2 weeks ago, I found a fox in the woods here that he could barely stand, and his fur was sparse in places. He had some kind of injury on him too, but he just looked starved to death, and he couldn't stand. His eyes were all glossed over, and I'd never found anything like that in the forest. You typically, that's a real rarity, and it broke my heart. I had to put him down. I mean, he was suffering horrifically. He literally could barely stand, and he clearly was not going to make it. I couldn't leave him there to suffer, but it broke my heart. I mean, to do what I had to do to end that suffering for him, and this is now the norm in the forest. And if a fox can't survive, I don't care who you are, I don't care what survival skills you think you have, you're not going to survive in the forest, period. I know I couldn't survive there now, and I've spent my life out there. I know the intricacies of the forest, and there's just not enough there to survive with now.
Dane, plus multiple stories of humans. I've heard. I recently met a woman who works in a respiratory section of a hospital, and when they get hit, everybody gets sick. The people are working overtime crazy. People are quitting because they're overworked, and it's just astonishing that everybody has episodes at the same time. This is not coincidence.
Then this is what it comes down to. And again, Greg, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I think the government's trying to clamp down on rights from every direction. But I hope that people who are fighting for a lot of different things unite behind climate engineering and realize that there is no provision you can store up that will allow you to survive if climate engineering continues. It's that simple. So
you're right, Dane, and I really hammer the Second Amendment constitutionalists on the geoengineering issue, because there are so many folks that are pro-Constitution and pro-Second Amendment, and they have no idea that geoengineering and chemtrails are going to kill them way before any kind of a government takeover, most likely. There's no guarantees of that, because I'm seeing some scary stuff happening on the gun front, but
there's scary stuff happening all the way around. I agree.
Exactly.
And there's no shortage of denial. I just deleted a comment off one of my articles. It was apparently from someone from the climate science community that, they lauded the GeoEngineering Watch site for the climate meltdown data we put up, but then said that, why do we mix all this conspiracy theory nonsense with aerosol spraying, and what kind of denial is there? That's somebody who's afraid. They're simply afraid, and somehow they can convince us it isn't happening. Maybe they can convince themselves it isn't happening. And it's the level of denial right now, again, all the way around is tremendous. But if people can get past that, they can break their chains of their programming, which is hard to do. We know it's hard to do because you look at the various religions around the globe, and I'm not faulting or commending any of them in one light or another, but I'm simply saying wherever you're born, that's what you believe. And that programming is very difficult to break. But it can be broken. It can be. If a person truly desires to see through lenses that are not colored, to take off their filters, you can break the chains of your programming, but you must want to. And again, it's imperative that we reach this critical mass of people who are no longer looking through filters, who see things as it is, who realize that their plan to retire in 10 years, 20 years, and live on the lake and have their Winnebago out in the front yard, it's not going to happen. Accept it. That's not going to happen. But if you want to be a part of preserving life on Earth, perhaps you still can be. And we need everybody to adopt that sort of philosophy, a philosophy that can't be shaken, a philosophy that isn't contingent upon having an ending that we imagined a certain way. None of us are writing this play. We're simply actors in it. So are we going to play our part well, or are we going to abandon our part? And now is when we find out. So if we all work together, we could definitely change the direction that we're headed, and we could definitely have a chance of preserving life on Earth, but we must try.
It's amazing the difference. It's amazing the difference that even one person can do. I hear stories from people like a woman in North Georgia who's making a lot of headway with the local officials there just by pounding them, educating them, having water tests done, testing the bark in trees, finding huge amounts of aluminum in the bark of dying trees. And this is the kind of stuff that puts cracks in that dam.
That would be Helen, right?
That would be Helen, yeah. She's doing a great job.
She's a great gal.
She just keeps pushing.
Definitely.
I salute Helen's work. And
the other thing, Dane, I wanted to make last week is that, survival, in regard to what you just said about people coming together, that was actually my campaign slogan when I ran for Congress in 12. But, the idea of survival not being a competition, it seems like, people want to talk about how they've reached 85,000 people and how, people I'm getting, like I had a Facebook message the other day of, what are people in Georgia doing from an activist in another state. And, if everybody did, like Russ has said before, if everybody would just do 10 minutes a week or an hour a week or even, whatever, survival should not be a competition. The idea of coming together, and who cares if somebody does more? I've done a lot. I don't look at other people that have done less and think any less of them. I'm just glad they're doing something.
Everybody there's none of us in a position to do nothing. None of us. And again, I hope people do prioritize this fight. I know a lot of people have obligations just to keep their family going that they need to tend to. But in the time available that they can spare for this fight, we need everybody in this fight with as much time as they can spare. Because this, again, the immediacy of what we face is immense. And there are those people who don't want to stand out. They don't want to, they know that the government's listening to everything, and they don't want to be put on the list, if you will. We're all on the list. We're all being herded off the plank right now. And I've said this before, but I wondered as a kid, if you know you're being marched to the gas chamber, why wouldn't you at least try? Why would you go peacefully into the gas chamber? It's not an option for me. So all of us, again, need to decide that now is the time when we still have a voice. Make that voice heard. Exercise your personal power now. You're needed now in the fight. Not tomorrow, not next week. Don't hide in the shadows thinking that somehow you're preserving your identity and maybe not putting yourself on the list, as I mentioned. That doesn't matter. I hope people are listening on my phone. I've been disconnected off a whole bunch of my recent radio shows, and my phone always sounds like there's strange things going on. I hope they're listening. I want them to listen. Maybe they'll understand that we are the sane ones in the room. All of us that are engaged in this fight are trying to save them and their children as well. So, again, don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of except not exercising your will correctly. That's all you own. For anybody out there, the only thing you own, all your possessions can be taken. You don't own them. You own your will. You own your sense of honor. Exercise it now while you can. Russ, if we can open the phone line, if you have a caller, I want to ask if anybody's listening or anybody is on the line, make it a short, concise question and not a long statement, because we have a lot of data to get at. It's not that I don't want your statement, but we just have simply so much to cover. It would be much more helpful, I think, to listeners if we can just get a quick question and maybe take another caller. So, Russ, you can open that up real quick for the last few minutes.
Sure, absolutely. If anybody wants to call in, the phone lines are open. We just had a caller, but I had to disconnect because there was so much background noise. It was overwhelming the system. The call-in number is 718-717-8296. One more time, it's 718-717-8296. Call in.
So, again, back to what we should perceive as our own. We live in a society where we're so conditioned to be selfish and to look at it as our possessions as our own. All of that can be taken. The moment they institute martial law, the government can take anything they want from you. This is law now. So why not exercise what really belongs to you, what can't be taken from you, and that's to use your will correctly.
We have a caller, Dane, when you're ready.
Okay, so we'll leave the point there, but this is the time when people need to exercise their personal power now. Russ, go ahead.
Absolutely. Caller with your phone number that ends in 73. Welcome. How are you? Caller with your phone number that ends in 73. You're there. You're on. Hello, caller.
Maybe shy.
Oh, well, maybe they're shy away from their phone.
Maybe second thoughts about being put on the list. But
that's NSA for you.
Well, we have another caller that ends in 23. You're on. How are you doing?
Hey.
Hi.
Am I on?
You are on.
Oh, hey, it's Helen. How are you guys?
That's Helen.
How are you?
Hey, Helen.
Hey, guys, really good. Hey, I want to say thank you for the kind words. That really made me feel good and warmed my heart. I always feel like I'm not doing enough, that I should be doing more. But anyway, my question is to Dane. You've mentioned to us how we are having a lot of the high levels of UVB and C rays coming through. I've been wondering, are the conventional sunscreens going to do us any good, or clothing to protect us from that kind of radiation? Or is there anything we can do to protect ourselves, our plants and animals from this?
Yes and no, Helen. It helps, but the further the UV spectrum goes to the downside, the more penetrating those rays are. So when you have, as you break this down, UVA is from, I believe, 385 to 315 nanometers in spectrum. Then UVB from 315 to 280 nanometers. Then from 280 to 100 is UVC, which we're not supposed to have on the surface at all, but we now do. Below UVC, we have X-ray. We all know X-rays go through a lot of things. That's why you have lead shielding, correct?
Right.
So we're actually seeing right now, and we're trying to verify some of what we're seeing, but even through tin, sheet metal, which is not a good shield for too low a spectrum of the UV radiation field, what appears to be a buildup of thermal energy on a surface directly below that shield that's not uniform, which means if you have a square box below even sheet metal shielding, we're seeing more heating on the surface of that box than on the side. And that's perplexing to us, which means that some of that even the spectrum that might be there might not be being fully deflected, and thus is hitting on the surface that's facing upward. Do you follow me? And with UVC, we're talking about very penetrating rays, very harmful optically. Now, we're not getting a lot of UVC, I want to stress that, but we're getting UVC measurements, and we're told it stops 100,000 feet up. And UVB, we know we're not just a little high, just to be clear to people. It's about 1,200% higher than we're being told. And again, the list of negatives from this is huge. So to answer your question, Helen, people should cover up. They should stay out of the sun. And the recent UV meter readings that even NASA confirmed from 2003, as if it should take them 11 years to put this out in the open, and how much worse is it now? UV readings of 43 on the normal UV scale, which 11 or 12 is considered high. 43 it's completely off the charts. And with readings that high, you don't go outside, period. So that's how bad it is in places right now. We believe a lot more places than we know yet. So bottom line is people need to be very careful about the sun, and especially optically. These UV readings are very harmful to the eyes, so great care must be taken. So do everything you can to cover up, limit your exposure, period. Take vitamin D. Don't rely on so much sun for that, because it's a double-edged sword now.
Yes,
So,
I've noticed my eyesight has really declined in the past couple of years, and I am noticing strange damage to a lot of the plants here, just really weird shriveling and discoloration and stuff like that, which I can't get any help from the state, despite, my trying to get to the agencies to get somebody to take some interest. It would be nice to get someone out here to try to figure out what exactly this is coming from. Is it Fukushima fallout? Is it the radiation damage you speak of, or is it the chemtrails?
The bottom line is that the damage you're seeing is much more related to geoengineering and the UV radiation issue. The radiation from Fukushima is a problem. Certainly, it's a problem, but it's a much more constant and direct and higher scale problem of the UV that we have. And again, I would not beat your head too much. Got a lot of background noise from somebody there. I would not beat your head too much on agency walls with people who don't want to listen, who have chosen to remain blind. Move on, build your army, wake up groups, organizations, and individuals that do care, that want to know. And when you have enough of those people on your side, you'll have the result like we just had in Shasta County, where you flood that place with, we had 400 or 500 in attendance, and now they can't ignore you anymore. And that's what you need. You have to have an army to wage a battle. Raise your army. Talk to people who want to wake up, who care. Don't beat your head on an agency wall, week in, week out, month in, month out. Don't do that. It's counterproductive. Raise an army to stand with you, and then they will listen. And we all need to start these spot fires of awareness every single day. If someone is willfully blind and they're easy to spot, move on. Just plant the seed and move on, as Greg said. So, Helen, thanks for the call. Thanks for all your work. Guys, I want to, Greg, any last thoughts? Because we're just about out of time. Greg and Russ?
All I'm going to say is make it short. Dane, you did a great job on your brochure and your DVD. I would encourage every listener to spend as much money as you can muster to get as many of those brochures printed and as many DVDs made to put in the hands of people that we can wake up and bring over to our side and to help the cause.
If I can follow up on that, you can download the flyer for free. You can print them locally. And you can, on the DVDs, if you get a copy or even download one off YouTube, print as many as you want. There's no copyright. This is all about getting the word out, period. So make copies of whatever you need. It's all there for free. So no worries on that. It starts spot fires. Russ?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just want to encourage people. We have a Facebook group that has over 24,000 people in it right now. It's growing by, 500 people a week. And this is the fastest growth rate we've ever experienced. So people are at least getting in on this, and if everybody did just a little bit every day, it would make a tremendous difference. That's what I look for. Don't look for 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week minimum. If people can do that, that's great. If you can do more, fantastic. And with technology, email, and or if they need help with duplicating CDs or whatever, we have people that will do that for you for a very, very little cost.
If you can do more, I encourage people again. The ship is going down right now. The water's coming over the deck. We're knee-deep in water, and that's how bad our situation is. So I know people have obligations you have to keep up with, but beyond that, I would cancel the cruise, turn off the football game, help us in this fight, because if everybody doesn't start towing this line, we're not going to have enough time, not going to make enough progress. But if everybody did, we will definitely bring this to light and definitely bring it to a stop. We just need everybody to participate.
Yeah, you can stand on the side of, sure, you can say, thank you, Greg and Dane. You can stand on the side of a busy highway with a sign and make a world of difference by educating these people. This is Russ Tanner on behalf of GeoEngineering Watch Radio and Dane Wigington and Greg Palin. We are at UCY.TV every Saturday at 12 noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us at UCY.TV. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.